Welcome back to Midlife Conversations. For this special bonus episode, I've got a very good friend of mine, Jennifer Hudye, and I'm just going to be upfront, she's my first non-midlife guest. She's not herself in midlife, but it doesn't matter because what she's got to share today, what we're going to be talking about is so important. And because she practices what she preaches, what we're going to talk about on this episode today, she has been so successful in her young life, like so successful. I mean, not only is she co-founder of Vision Amplifier now, founder of Conscious Copy, she is the founder of Vision Driven, a group of companies focusing on helping entrepreneurs clarify and communicate the vision and messaging they're here to bring to the world. She's been a frequent guest speaker on some of the most top entrepreneurial events, including Genius Network, Entrepreneurs Organization, Traffic and Conversion Summit, TEDx, and War Room. The list goes on and on and on. I have learned so much from her. She is just the go-to expert when it comes to vision. If you've been with me for quite some time, you know I love vision. So I wanted to have her on today to hear how she does it, what advice she has for us. Thank you so much for being here today, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me, Natalie. I am excited.
Okay, so let's back up. I don't usually start with someone's age, but can you share your age for a minute? Because I want people to understand how successful you are for your age. Like how old are you? Are you even 30 yet?
I just turned 30.
Okay, so she just turned 30. Okay, so all of us listening, we could be her mom. Let's just we'll put our egos aside there for a minute. But let's back up. How in the heck did you become as successful as you have become? I mean, in your mid-20s, you were crushing it.
Well, I think it's all relative, right? But there's a few key pieces that mentors have taught me early on that I am so incredibly grateful for. I think the first one, bar none, is finding really, really amazing mentors that are where you want to be, or they have aspects of their life that you really admire, you respect. And that's one of the things that I did is I found phenomenal mentors early on. And what they did is they taught me really potent lessons that maybe took them a decade or two to learn. And they were able to share it with me. And then I was able to, what I call like collapsing timelines, what I was able to maybe accomplish in a year or two was because they were so generous of sharing with me the failures and the lessons and how to really get to the specific result. So that's one of the biggest ones.
Yeah. One of the first things I learned about you or noticed about you when I first met you is I remember having a conversation with you and I said something, I don't even know what it was, but I said something and you said, what's your vision for that? And I thought, interesting question. You said, what's your vision for that? No matter what people would ask you business-wise, goal-wise, you would always bring it back to what's your vision for it. Where did that stem from? And did you always focus through vision or was that learned through your mentors?
I've always focused on vision. When I actually look back to when I was like a little girl, I was so incredibly focused and determined. And I do think it is one of those gifts that I had, but then it was because of putting myself in the right environment with the right people and learning the other skill sets that go well with it. But it has been kind of natural for me to always think about, okay, if I'm going to do something, like what is the intention of this? What's the purpose? Where do I want to go? What is that destination in mind so that I actually understand the path that I'm taking? But then it really wasn't until when I first got into the personal development world, it would have been like my late teens. And I actually had a mentor in college that I started working for. And part of working for him, he told me to start reading certain business books. And I kept seeing that come up over and over again, is the power of having a clear intention, a clear vision before anything else. And then it really was when I started my company, Conscious Copy & Co. And I didn't know how to write. I was bootstrapping my business. I had no team and I was just starting out completely unknown in the space. And there was a guy named Cameron Harold who wrote the book Vivid Vision. And I had met him at this business dinner. And one of the first things he said to me is he was like, one of the best things you can possibly do if you really want to grow fast in this business is create a vivid vision. for exactly what you want your company to look like, feel like, sound like 3 years into the future, as if it's already happened. So that's what I did. I sat down, I got really, really clear of what I wanted conscious copy to look like. And then, of course, there was a lot of hard work, a lot of failure, a lot of just taking massive action and figuring it out. But so many of the things that began to happen were wild. I mean, I wrote down that I wanted to work with clients like Tony Robbins and Joe Polish and Bulletproof Copy and JJ Virgin and all of these people that I had no idea how to even come in contact with. And then over this chain of events, I ended up getting introduced to those people, and all these doors began to open that were all aligned to my vision.
Jen, I remember you told me a story. This was really stuck with me because I'm a huge fan of vision boards, or I call them decision boards now. But you had an image of a house, like that you're like a dream house that was so far in your future. And then you ended up on an appointment and you were in the exact house.
Yeah.
That was wild.
Yeah. So the short version is I had this little podcast. It was this little baby podcast that I hosted called Conscious Hustler. And one of my friends reached out to me and she asked if she could be on my podcast. And I was like, of course, I would love you to. And I lived in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And she was flying in to come to an event in Phoenix. And she was staying at a friend's place. Now, about 2 weeks prior, on a Friday night, I sat down and built out this vision board for my life. And I found this random photo of this home on Zillow. And it was for sale, but I just loved this home. And it was on Camelback Mountain, my favorite mountain to hike. So I put the photos on my vision board and pretty much just forgot about it. So when I went to go do the podcast episode with my friend, she told me to meet her at the place that she was staying. And I show up there and I walk up to the door and my jaw just drops. And I'm like, this is the house. And I go inside and it's not even just sort of the house. Maybe the house kind of looks like the house. It's the exact house. It had all of the same furniture in there that was in my photo. There's even a bottle of like this art portrait and a bottle of wine in the background of the photo that was still there when I was at the house. And it turns out that the person who owned the house was trying to sell the house. And that's how I saw it on Zillow, but I had no idea. And the person who owned that house ended up being Joe Polish, the founder of Genius Network, who owns one of the largest entrepreneurial organizations. Wow. And then we ended up talking and connecting. And that was really my big break in copywriting, because I got to start writing copy for him and Genius Network. And that opened up doors to all these people who were on my vivid vision of my dream clients. And that all happened in a 2-week time span. So
that is so wild.
You don't need to know how it happens. You just need to freaking put it down.
When people first hear about vision for the first time, and there's some people listening that kind of are, I think they think it's, oh, well, that's just luck. That's just luck. But I think once you really understand vision and that you start creating what you're focusing on, it can shift that. Can you speak a little into that about luck versus, because obviously you can go real quick to woo woo, like, oh, I just put an image and it just happens. But what's your take on all of that?
Yeah. So there is actually science that shows, for example, our brain has this part called the reticular activating system. And it is the part of our brain between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. There are some people call it the subconscious. And this reticular activating system is like a little web. It's kind of like the Google for your brain, meaning at any given moment, there's millions of bits of information that are coming through your 5 senses. And this part of the brain is sifting, sorting, and filtering to decide what parts you're supposed to pay attention to. And then it goes into your subconscious mind. And so this is kind of the science behind the law of attraction. If you think about someone who says, okay, I want to buy a new vehicle, maybe I want a white Tesla. And then as soon as you decide that, your brain, that part of your brain says, okay, that's important. And then suddenly you start seeing that car everywhere and it becomes in your awareness. So in having a vision, it's essentially starting to program your brain what's important, what's not. The more that you pay attention to what's important, the more your energy and focus goes there, the more it opens you up to the possibility of bringing that to life.
Wow. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So this can work negatively too, I'm assuming, like if you're focusing on what you don't want.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the spiral. We're, in any given moment, we're never at a standstill. We're either spiraling upward or spiraling downward.
Yeah.
And so I think there's so much value though in knowing what we don't want as well, but not lingering in that. One of my favorite quotes is polarity creates clarity.
Well, that's really good. I love that.
I don't remember where I heard that, but it's so true, where it's knowing what we don't want is just as valuable as what we do want. But as soon as we know what we don't want, we want to switch it into what we do want and focus on that.
Okay, I've got some tough questions here for you because so and I'm going to ask you how in a minute, because this comes up a lot, and this dates back to, well, I want to share a little bit. I'm not going to get too much into my story, but the whole reason I even ended up online or teaching fat loss or fitness or nutrition is because of a vision driven thought that I had 15, 16 years ago. And it was not liking who I was at the time and going, I want something different, and interrupting myself from saying, I hate myself, I'm overweight, I'm this and that, like all the negative self-talk, which I now call false assumed truths, and saying, but what do you actually want? And I remember having this whole moment of visualizing what I want and creating a decision board and all the things. And because of that, my whole life changed directions because I started focusing on what I wanted. So when people would come to me for fat loss, nutrition, losing weight, whatever it was, the first question I would say is, what do you want and why? Because too many times people would come and say, I'm overweight, I hate myself, I'm overweight, they would tell me all the things didn't work, all the things that they don't want, all the things. And I'd say, but what do you want and why? And it became this hard interruption for people. So I guess, why is that so hard for people, and how do they break that pattern when they are stuck in self beat up of not liking where their life is or their business is or whatever it is?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of the default to the human nature. When our brain is designed to constantly be looking for danger. And then if we begin to program it into what's wrong, we're just playing out that pattern. So oftentimes, it's with the visioning process, it's one, setting and deciding and declaring the vision. And then naturally, anything that isn't a match to that vision is going to rise up to be released and transformed. So all of those self-sabotaging thoughts, etc., those are usually things that have been we've taken on. They're not part of who we naturally are. Whether it was in school or growing up, or our parents or society has programmed us into these beliefs. And as soon as we identify, okay, I don't want this, the very first step is awareness, because then from there we can actually make a decision to change. But because we've been playing that program over and over again, we need to change the program. And that takes work, that takes effort. It's not just say one affirmation and suddenly you're good.
I see vision working a ton in personal desire and personal life, but I also think this is missing a lot in business. And I say this because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, as you do too, CEOs, founders. And one thing I see them doing wrong a lot is they don't communicate or cast their vision to their team, and then they want to understand, they're upset that things aren't going the way that they want. Can you speak into that? Because this is a big blind spot for a lot of business owners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see with entrepreneurs, business owners, there's really two camps. One is either they're clear of their vision, or two, they're clear of it, but they're not clearly articulating it, or they're actually unclear of it and they're hoping that they can just figure it out as they go. But a lot of that creates chaos, overwhelm amongst their team. And the biggest thing I see is entrepreneurs think that their team can read their mind, and they assume that they're intuitive enough to literally, they think a thought and then suddenly that person picked up on it. And maybe they're sharing aspects of the vision, bits and pieces of the puzzle, but then the team is left to try piece it together and figure out, okay, how does this play in the grand scheme of things? And when the team isn't clear of the what, the where, and the why, then that's where a lot of frustration comes in for the founder because they can't fully delegate. They can't fully let go. They can't fully make the team accountable and responsible for the how because they don't even know the direction that they're going. So when it comes to entrepreneurs, I think a lot of them just haven't taken the time to get clear of where they want to go. Most of the time they built their business out of a need or a problem that needed solved. And then there's a certain shift and maturity that happens in the business where the more people they have around them, the more it requires a vision, and the less that, or the longer they wait without having it, the more chaos. And then they just stay stuck in this loop.
That makes sense.
Repeating the same year over and over again.
What are some things, because some people are listening and they're going, okay, well, I got that. And I am communicating my vision. What do you see people doing wrong when they think they're communicating their vision well, but they're actually not?
Yes. So number one is thinking that sharing a revenue goal is sharing your vision. I see that all the time. Entrepreneurs will be like, yeah, I do communicate my vision. It's the $1 million business or the $5 million business. And it's kind of like saying, if you were to just go to a general contractor, say, build me a house, and you have a $5 million budget, do you think that only with that, they're going to design the exact house that you want? Absolutely not. So that's not a vision. The second one is they think that they're being clear with it, but they're really being vague. And they're not painting the picture enough of what it looks like and what it sounds like and adding the texture to it. So oftentimes they'll use vague words like our team displays awesome teamwork. Everyone gets along. We are committed to our goals. And they think that that's a vision, but really that can be interpreted 1,000 different ways.
Wow.
There's so many gaps there. And then the final one is they get really caught up in the how. They think that they start building out a strategic plan versus actually communicating a vision.
Okay. So one thing I learned from Jen, and this was life-changing for me, and I'm practicing this a lot. I don't know if you remember me sending it to you, Jen, but I was so proud of myself, but I got it from you. And I had read Cameron Herold's book, and I think he's great, but it took me going to your actual workshop to for this to click for me. But you talked a lot about how to create an actual vivid vision that comes to reality. And I took it another level where I was like, you know what? I'm creating this for every area of my business. So I have a midlife conversation deep dive summit coming out end of May. And I needed for this summit to have 42 speakers, and I wanted very specific speakers for this summit. And I thought, okay, I could just message people and ask, but I'm going to take Jen's approach. And I worked on, with your method, this entire, I made it in a PDF. I did the whole thing, the whole vision of what this is going to impact, what this is going to look like, what this is going to feel like. I sent it to 52 people. I needed 42 speakers. 50 of them said yes. 50. Whoa. And the reason is because they all said, this aligns, how you explained your vision aligns with me, and it makes sense. And it really taught me a lesson there as someone who thinks that they live in vision, about taking this extra step to make sure how you are communicating really is bringing in feeling and emotion and all of those things, because it makes life a lot easier. And I mean, I learned that from you, and I feel like I've taken that to every area now. I think, what's the vision and how do I communicate this first so people work towards the vision versus the to-do list? So good. Yeah. Yeah. And then it invites the collaboration where maybe there was aspects of the how that you didn't even know that someone else can bring in, and it's going to take it to a whole nother level, but it still matches and aligns to the direction. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a few more questions because I have some very specific questions. And then after I ask you those questions, I want to get into the method, how is the best way for people to really solidify this? And I want to even talk about what you do with that. But my first questions are, because I'm just thinking what someone might be thinking now is, I'm just going to rattle them off. Number one is vision. When people say it's woo woo or it's weird or it doesn't work, what's your answer to that?
My answer to that is, if you look at not only every successful person, but every industry, whether it's business, whether it's sports, whether it's spirituality, etc., the common thread is vision. So for example, there are studies that show that Olympic athletes, and actually let me ballpark a quick short story, but there is studies that show that visualization, when we actively visualize ourselves doing something, they did research studies of people playing the piano, people skiing, people playing sports, that the same areas of our brain fire and wire when we're simply visualizing compared to when we're doing the actual act. And there's studies that measure this now. And so there was even one of this study of people who imagined doing bicep curls a couple of times a week over the course of a few weeks, and then people who were actually doing those bicep curls, and they found that the people who were just visualizing it also experienced growth in their biceps, not to the degree of the people who are actually doing the act, but a pretty substantial amount. And so
that's my next program, visualize your abs. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone visualize your abs. We don't do anything. We're just going to visualize them. They're going to come.
I think, but in all seriousness, I think there's so much power in the rehearsal of it. So even if you got to go and do friggin' abs, but if you're in the car, like playing a song that you love to work out to and literally imagine yourself doing it, why not? Do a test. Notice the difference.
Yeah.
And the way that I learned about vivid vision was there was this Olympic athlete, and he was performing, or he came and spoke to a business group and shared how the reason why he was able to win 3 gold medals in the Olympics, he said, was because this hack that he did, which most people were visualizing themselves doing the act, and he would in the sport, but then he would also visualize himself on the podium, and he was rehearsing himself with wearing the medals over and over again. So I also think that there's the power in visualizing, what does the win look like? What is the final moment where you know that the visions become your reality?
And I'm going to add feeling to that, because I know you would say that too, but to me, that's what helps me the most, is when I can actually get in the place of the feeling, like it's actually happening. I feel like that feeling is what shifts me, because you're working towards the feeling versus the to-do list or the action. Can you speak a little bit into money and vision? Because that's a tricky one for people to wrap their mind around. Like, they're like, well, like whatever state that they're trying to get to, like, I want to buy a $10 million house, or I want to buy whatever it is, like they have this, or I just want to get out of debt, or whatever it is that their money goals. How does a vision for money typically work?
Well, money is neutral. Like, money is just a tool, but then it's the emotions that we attach around money. And so what I would recommend is you could visualize a certain amount of money in the bank, right? But always linking to, okay, what is the feeling or the emotion that I have connected to that? But I think there's power in, what are you going to do if you want to receive more money and use visualization as a tool? What are you going to do with the money, and actually visualize yourself and get in the emotional act of feeling what it's going to feel like? And then there is a very, very, very important stuff in the kind of vision to made reality process, which is, once you set your vision, like I said, anything that isn't a match to it is going to come up. And that's where I think a lot of the maybe manifestation community, or a lot of people who talk about that, miss an important piece, which is cleaning up the patterns and the beliefs that aren't a match to that. So if you really, really, really want money, but then, and you're visualizing it, but then a majority of your day, you're in lack, you're in scarcity, you're like always, you're feeling like you don't have it, then you got to clean that up. Because we talk about this a lot in the retreat, that it's always asking, okay, what's the version of me who is living this vision? What is their identity? How do they think? How do they act? What are their beliefs? What's their environment? And so if that version of you that's super wealthy, they're probably not in money scarcity. So what do you need to clean up to make sure you're a match to that?
So good. When I was years ago training people in real time, I had a client that when I asked her what she wanted, she described, she's like, oh, I want to have a tiny waist and I want to be curvy and I want to be this and that. Like she described what she wanted to look like. And then we're working out and this woman walks in the gym looking like she just described. And my client looked at her and rolled her eyes to me and said, oh, that's so fake. And I thought, what an interesting thing. And I pointed it out to her. I'm like, you just told me what you wanted. And somebody just walked in looking the exact part. And instead of you saying, what is she doing? How does she get to that? Or how can I look like that? You went to what was wrong with her. You're like canceling out your vision. And I think that's what people do with money too. They say, I want, but then they're constantly talking about their debt or this, or what the money is for bad people or whatever it is. They have this whole story. Money's evil. And then they're wondering why they're not ever matching.
Totally. And when it comes to jealousy or envy, I even notice if any of that comes up within myself, connected to anyone, if I see someone who has something I want and I'm like, oh, I would like that. And there's any tinge of that, which there really isn't anymore because I've cleared a lot of that, but there used to be, as I would ask, oh, okay, what part are they really embodying that I'm not, that I want? Because really jealousy and envy are just signs and signals of us not living fully into something that we really desire. And so then the shift there, and something that I share in the Vivid Vision retreats all the time, is when you that happens, you say, ooh, I'll have some of that too. Instead of going to, ooh, how dare they, or whatever. It's like, I have my own version of that. And you embrace it, you celebrate it. And that's why I think it's so important to be celebrating other people's success, because you're allowing that upward spiral for yourself as a result.
So I want to talk about your method for a minute, but I want another little brief story here. So I used to teach, and I've done them. Many of you listening have been to them. I did vision retreats. I don't know that I even called them vision retreats. I call them breakthrough weekends. And the whole premise behind it was leaving behind what we no longer want and creating our vision and next level. So when Jen started stepping into vision retreats, I had that like, oh, well, I already know that. Because sometimes we think we already know everything, right? But I loved my conversations with Jen, and I'm like, I'm going to go with an open mind. I want to hear her process. And y'all, I was blown away, and it takes a lot to blow me away. It does. I was blown away. Like it changed. I think it'll change my whole life, to be honest with you. It's changed my year. It's completely changed my business, how I've showed up, where I've focused my time. It's changed how my teams responded to me. It's changed how people in my life have responded to me. It was one of the best investments I've ever made, like hands down. So I want to talk a little bit about your method here. And I'm also going to, for those of you listening, if you want more, we're absolutely putting a link, and Jen's going to tell you where to go, all the things, because she does hold these small retreats, a few times a year. And they are, they're exclusive. Like you have to be a certain, she's very picky about who comes in, and I understand, because it's a really important closed space and we need the space to be supporting everyone there. So not everyone's a candidate for it. I want to be clear about that. But if you are, we're going to share where you can do that. But can you talk a little bit about your method and how you even came up with what you do?
I came up with my method, one, from kind of codifying my own personal experience, two, in being completely immersed into the world of vision and studying with some of the top leaders and mentors in the world. And then third, in guiding over 1,500 entrepreneurs through this process over the last 7 years. I've been able to see that there's kind of a repeatable, consistent process that honestly, it isn't mine. It really is how the world works. And then I've just codified it in a way that is my interpretation of it, because a lot of this is based on universal laws, which are going to work all the time, no matter what, but they don't work your way. You need to work it the way it works, like electricity. We can't make electricity work our way. So there's a code for transformation. And the first step is making the space for the vision to come through. So there's a term called Zim Zoom, which means before the world was created, first the space needed to be created for the world. So many people want a vision, but they're not willing to let go of certain aspects or ways of being of their life that they don't love anymore. So we got to make this space energetically, physically, emotionally, so that you actually have a platform to work from.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. Wow.
And then,
because we're not doing that. Most people are not doing that first.
No, and it's so important. Even like, how are you decluttering your physical space? How are you? And so many people have a misunderstanding when it comes to sacrifice, where a mentor of mine, Mary Morrissey, used to tell me, you can't have it all, in quotes. And she said, you can't have your shame, your anger, your fear, and also have this amazing, mind-blowing life that you want. You need to be willing to let go of what no longer serves you to be able to make room for the what's next. So that's step one. And we have a really deep process in which we go through in order to make that space in our retreats. And then step two is around clarifying the vision. And I believe that there's the inner build or inner world of doing this, and then the outer build and the outer world. So many people first think, okay, I need clarity on my vision. What do I want externally? But then that question really freaks them out. So you got to ask yourself different questions, which we guide you through. And one is, in the external world, what do you want on life's buffet? You got to explore different possibilities to have an idea of what you want. But the area that people get caught the most is in this state of confusion, because there's some sort of block that's getting in their way around truly getting clarity. And clarity comes with self-honesty, which can be a bold and courageous act. And a lot of us think that we're being honest with ourselves, and we're not. So we help people get to that point where they can really get to the core of what they want.
How, like, what is your experience with people coming into something like this? Because do you see, is it something people are scared of typically? Is there resistance, or is there, because you do have a very different method. It's not like a normal, like you go to a regular seminar and or you read a book. It's not like a normal vision method. What's your experience of people with this?
A common thing that people will come in nervous about is thinking that on the other side of it, that they're going to want something so radically different than what they have right now, and they're going to have to blow up their whole life as a result.
Okay.
And that's a very normal, natural, I think, thought. Anytime you do deep transformation work, it is that there's a fear there. What I often share is, when it comes to finding your true vision, it's always going to feel so aligned and exciting and life-giving and what you would absolutely love. So getting to the core of it, there may be some tough decisions that you recognize you need to make in the interim, but it's all in the highest service of a life that you would absolutely love.
Okay, let's talk about the actual retreat, because I know some people are asking. And by the way, I'm going to have we'll put everything in the show notes that you'll see if you want to look on the show notes. But also, if you go to midlifeconversations.com/vision, midlifeconversations.com/vision, I'll have this episode as well as the links to her retreat, so you can see more details about it. But can you do just a quick little elevator description? I like to say elevator pitch, because it kind of is an elevator pitch, but I want I know people are interested and want to know, who is this for and how can they find out more? What's their process if they go to that page? What do you tell, anything you want them to know?
Yeah, the Vivid Vision Retreat is for entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs who want to get clear of their next big vision for not only their business, but their life. And we have a very deep, intentional, specific, repeatable process, like I shared, of helping you create the space for the vision to come through, clarifying your vision, being able to start to effectively communicate it, because it's so important as a leader, getting clear of who you need to become as a result, and then what needs to happen for you to start to bring it to life. And we use a really powerful breathwork process, which you experienced, called the Vision Amplifier. And it's a way for you to really get to the core of what it is that you want. And you'll get so many insights, downloads. And
I want to go back just for that part. That was amazing.
Yeah.
It feels like you're in a deep meditation, especially if you have a hard time meditating, because like me, it just brings you to that place without having to, do all that.
Yeah. It's extremely experiential. You're surrounded by other amazing people. And by the end, you walk away just so clear of the direction of your life, your future. You get excited, and then the confidence to really bring it forth.
Oh, so good. Okay. I don't typically push people's retreats, but I'm telling you, if this was meant for you today, if you are listening and this is resonating and you're like, okay, I need help getting to that next level, this was life-changing for me. This made a huge difference. It's a few days that you will not regret. You'll enjoy. In fact, when I went there, I brought one of my best friends, and I brought my daughter's stepmom, because I thought, I'm going to be so in this vision mode. I need them to be in it too. So we went as a threesome there. It was amazing. I highly recommend, if this is resonating with you, to make sure you go and look at that page. So again, you can find out more on midlifeconversations.com/vision. Thank you so much, Jen, for being here and for teaching what you do and for helping so many of us up-level our lives to our next level vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. This is so much fun. And I'm so grateful to, just be plugged into your community.